All right, so today we're diving into Machiavelli's The Prince, and clearly we're not shying away from tough ideas about power and leadership.
Well, it's a text that even centuries later still has the power to shock. What's remarkable to me is how Machiavelli really just strips away all romanticism surrounding leadership.
Yeah,
He doesn't dwell on how rulers should behave, the ideal, but instead he dissects how they actually operate
right.
in the real world, in the messy, often brutal real world.
It's almost like he's giving us this blueprint for ambition,
Yeah,
with no sugarcoating. He
yeah,
tackles everything, conquering new territories to the dangers of relying on mercenaries.
right.
And of course, there's Cesar Borgia, the ultimate Machiavellian figure.
Yeah, Borgia's story is fascinating because it highlights the inherent tension in Machiavelli's thinking. On one hand, he champions strategic brilliance and decisive action, which Borgia clearly possessed.
Right.
But on the other, Borgia's downfall illustrates how even the most meticulous plans can be undone by just sheer bad luck.
Oh, yeah.
It underscores a key takeaway from The Prince that adaptability is just as crucial as strategy.
Yeah, it's a sobering reminder that control is often an illusion, even for the most cunning rulers.
Absolutely.
Speaking of control, Machiavelli starts by categorizing different types of states, republics, principalities, and so on. Why do you think he felt this categorization was so important?
It gets to the heart of Machiavelli's practical approach.
Okay.
You see, he's providing a framework for understanding the unique challenges a ruler might face depending on the type of state they govern.
Okay.
Conquering and holding on to a republic with its ingrained traditions of civic participation requires a different strategy than ruling a principality,
Right.
built on hereditary power.
So it's like he's saying, know your terrain both literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
Then he dives into the complexities of maintaining control over newly acquired territories, especially those with distinct cultures. Didn't he use the Turkish Sultan's difficulties in Greece as an example?
Precisely. The Sultan, despite his vast power, found it incredibly difficult to rule Greece effectively from afar.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he had to relocate there to solidify his control.
Wow.
And it highlights a crucial point for any leader.
Okay.
Proximity and direct involvement are key to maintaining authority.
So it seems Machiavelli was a big believer in boots on the ground, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But then he poses this intriguing question. Why didn't Alexander the Great's massive empire immediately crumble after his death?
Right.
You'd think such a vast and newly conquered realm would fall apart without its charismatic leader.
That's where Machiavelli's analysis goes beyond just individual personalities.
Okay.
He argues that the structure of the Persian Empire, which Alexander inherited, was key to its continued stability.
Okay.
The Persian system, with its centralized king and appointed officials, proved more manageable than, say, a kingdom fragmented by a powerful, independent lords,
Right.
constantly vying for power.
So a well-organized system can sometimes outweigh the influence of a single leader, however charismatic.
It can indeed.
But then there's Cesare Borgia, who definitely wasn't afraid to shake things up, to put it mildly.
Oh yeah, Borgia is Machiavelli's prime example of a ruler who understood how to acquire and consolidate power, even if through ruthless means.
Yeah.
He was willing to eliminate rivals, forge alliances, and even employ brilliant minds like Leonardo da Vinci.
Wow.
A true Renaissance power move.
Yeah.
All in the service of his ambition.
So Borgia's story is captivating, but also tragic.
Definitely.
Machiavelli seems to admire his strategic brilliance, yet acknowledges that Borgia's ultimate downfall was heavily influenced by factors outside his control.
Yeah.
His father's death, his own illness. This raises an interesting question: to what extent can a leader truly shape their own destiny?
That's the central tension that runs throughout The Prince.
Okay.
Machiavelli firmly believes in human agency and strategic planning,
Yeah.
but he also acknowledges the unpredictable role of fortune, what we might call luck.
Right.
It's like a game of chess.
Okay.
You can make all the right moves but still be checkmated by an unforeseen event.
So even a Machiavellian prince isn't immune to the whims of fate.
It would seem not.
Speaking of things a ruler should be wary of, Machiavelli has some strong opinions about armies, particularly mercenaries.
Yeah.
He seems to view them with utter disdain.
Machiavelli's critique of mercenaries goes beyond mere pragmatism.
Okay.
It's almost visceral.
Really?
He sees them as inherently unreliable, motivated solely by profit, and ultimately a threat to the ruler who employs them.
Interesting.
He uses the Venetian Republic as a cautionary tale,
Okay.
highlighting how their dependence on mercenaries led to the loss of centuries' worth of territorial gains.
It's a harsh lesson. Owning loyalty is always more valuable than renting it.
Indeed.
Which begs the question, What does Machiavelli propose as the alternative to these fickle mercenary forces?
He argues that a ruler must cultivate a strong, loyal army composed of their own citizens.
Okay,
This ensures not only greater reliability in battle,
right.
but also a deeper connection between the ruler and the ruled.
I see.
It's about fostering a sense of shared purpose and destiny rather than relying on transactional relationships based on money.
That makes sense. You want soldiers who are fighting for something more than just a paycheck.
Exactly.
But that leads us to the question that's probably on everyone's mind when they think of Machiavelli.
Uh-huh.
Is it better for a ruler to be loved or feared?
Ah, the infamous Machiavellian dilemma. It's a question that still sparks debate.
Yeah.
And for good reason, Machiavelli's answer perhaps unsurprisingly leans towards fear.
Many might find that idea troubling. How can effective leadership be built on fear?
Right.
Doesn't that contradict the idea of virtuous leadership, which Machiavelli also seems to endorse?
Well, it's an interesting point, and we'll definitely get into that more deeply next time.
Yeah, it's a tricky concept to reconcile. On the one hand, we admire leaders who can inspire love and loyalty, but Machiavelli seems to suggest that fear is a more reliable tool
Right.
for maintaining control. Is he advocating for a purely transactional relationship between ruler and subject? Where obedience is driven just solely by fear of punishment?
Well, it's important to remember that Machiavelli is writing within a specific historical context.
Okay,
A time of constant warfare and political instability.
right.
In such an environment, he argues, a ruler needs to prioritize stability and security,
Okay,
above all else.
right,
While he doesn't entirely dismiss the value of love,
right.
he believes it's a more fragile and fickle foundation for power,
Okay.
compared to fear.
So it's a pragmatic assessment based on his understanding of human nature
Exactly.
and the realities of power. But wouldn't a ruler who relied solely on fear risk becoming a tyrant, ultimately alienating their own people?
Machiavelli addresses that concern directly.
Okay.
While advocating for a degree of fear,
Okay.
he's equally adamant about avoiding hatred.
Okay.
He understands that a ruler who becomes an object of widespread loathing is vulnerable to conspiracies and rebellion.
It's like he's walking this tightrope,
Yeah,
trying to strike a balance between instilling enough fear to maintain order
right.
while avoiding the kind of oppressive rule that breeds resentment and ultimately undermines a ruler's authority. He even uses the example of Annibale Bentivogli, whose infant son was spared during a coup attempt, solely because of the love people held for the Bentivogli family.
That story beautifully illustrates Machiavelli's point. It suggests that even in the cutthroat world of power politics, genuine goodwill can act as a shield.
Right.
Even for the most vulnerable.
Wow.
It's a reminder that a ruler's power is not solely derived from force or intimidation,
Okay.
but also from the bonds they forge with their subjects.
So it's a fascinating paradox.
It is.
Machiavelli, the supposed champion of ruthlessness, is also acknowledging the power of genuine human connection. But even with the most carefully crafted balance of fear and goodwill, there's always the element of chance, the unpredictable hand of fate. How does Machiavelli reconcile his emphasis on human agency with the undeniable role of luck?
He dedicates a whole chapter to the concept of fortuna,
Okay.
fortune or luck, acknowledging its immense influence on human affairs. He uses the analogy of a raging river. You can't stop its flow entirely,
Right.
but you can build dams and canals to direct its course.
So it's not about denying the existence of luck,
No.
but rather about understanding its power and learning to adapt to its unpredictable currents. It seems he's advocating for a kind of flexible leadership, one that can adjust to changing circumstances.
Exactly. He argues that those who rely solely on luck will inevitably crumble when their fortune changes.
Right.
A successful ruler, in Machiavelli's view, combines strategic planning with the ability to improvise and respond effectively to unexpected challenges.
So it's a blend of calculation and adaptability.
Yep.
You have to have a plan, but be prepared to deviate from it when circumstances demand.
Right.
But Machiavelli takes this a step further, doesn't he?
He does.
He goes beyond just analyzing power. He actually calls for action. His final chapter is a passionate plea to Lorenzo de' Medici
Yes.
to unite Italy and free it from foreign domination.
That's what makes The Prince such a compelling read.
Yeah.
It's not just a dry theoretical treatise on power. It's a call to arms, a personal appeal,
Right.
infused with Machiavelli's own deep-seated patriotism and his belief in Lorenzo's potential to achieve greatness.
It's almost like he's presenting Lorenzo with a challenge, a roadmap to achieving historical glory. But it also raises an interesting question. Was Machiavelli genuinely convinced that Lorenzo possessed the qualities of a true Machiavellian prince? Or was he simply projecting his own hopes and ambitions onto a powerful figure?
That's a question historians still debate. Machiavelli clearly saw in Lorenzo the potential for greatness. the ability to unite a fragmented Italy and usher in a new era of stability and prosperity. Whether Lorenzo truly embodied the Machiavellian ideal is open to interpretation.
It's fascinating how a text written centuries ago can still spark such debate.
Absolutely.
But beyond the historical context, what do Machiavelli's ideas about power and leadership tell us about human nature itself? Are we all in some way Machiavellian creatures, constantly vying for advantage and seeking to exert our will on the world?
That's a question that goes to the heart of Machiavelli's enduring relevance.
Yeah.
Whether we agree with his conclusions or find them repellent, his analysis forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own nature,
Right.
about the allure of power,
Okay.
and the compromises we're sometimes willing to make to achieve our goals.
It's like holding up a mirror to human ambition
Yeah.
and asking us to consider how much are we willing to sacrifice in the pursuit of power?
Right.
And are there limits to what's acceptable, even in the service of a supposedly greater good?
Those are questions Machiavelli leaves us grappling with. He provides a framework for understanding power, but ultimately the responsibility to define its ethical boundaries rests with each individual.
Okay.
And that's perhaps his most enduring legacy,
Yeah.
forcing us to engage in a continual dialogue about the nature of power, its uses, and its potential abuses.
It's a conversation that's as relevant today as it was in Machiavelli's time. Whether we're talking about politics, business, or even personal relationships, the dynamics of power are constantly at play. Understanding those dynamics, recognizing the motivation of others, and developing our own strategies for navigating the complexities of human interaction. Those are the true lessons of The Prince.
And those lessons, while often challenging, can be incredibly empowering. Machiavelli may not offer easy answers,
Right.
but he equips us with the tools to analyze power, to understand its allure, and to make more informed choices about how we wield it or choose to resist it in our own lives.
Yeah, it feels like Machiavelli's giving us this toolkit, to understand the world, but he's left the assembly instructions deliberately vague.
Right? He outlines the mechanics of power,
Yeah.
but leaves the moral considerations largely up to us.
It makes you wonder if Machiavelli himself even had a definitive answer in mind.
Yeah.
Or if he just delighted in leaving us to grapple with that uncertainty.
Perhaps that's the ultimate Machiavellian lesson, The world is complex, power is a double-edged sword, and easy answers are often illusory.
Right.
He challenges us to develop our own framework for ethical leadership, informed by his insights,
Okay.
but ultimately shaped by our own values.
He almost seems to be saying, here's how the game is played, but whether you choose to play it and how you choose to play it is up to you.
And in a way, that's a very modern perspective. In our world where we're bombarded with information and constantly confronted with ethical dilemmas,
Right.
Machiavelli's emphasis on critical thinking and independent judgment feels remarkably relevant.
It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers of history, but active participants in shaping the world around us.
Absolutely.
We all wield power in some form, whether it's within our families, our workplaces, or our communities.
Right.
And how we choose to exercise that power matters.
Exactly. The Prince may have been written for a 16th century Italian ruler,
Yeah.
but its insights into human nature strategy and the dynamics of power transcend time and place.
Mhm.
It's a text that can help us navigate not just the grand stage of politics,
Right.
but the everyday challenges of leadership, influence, and decision-making.
So after this deep dive into The Prince, I'm left with a sense of both caution and empowerment. Caution, because Machiavelli reveals the darker aspects of human ambition.
Yeah.
The potential for manipulation and abuse that exists within any power structure.
But also empowerment, because he reminds us that we're not simply pawns in a game orchestrated by others.
Right.
We have the capacity to understand power,
Okay.
to analyze its workings, and to make conscious choices about how we engage with it.
He's given us a lens through which to view the world,
Mm-hmm.
a way of decoding the motivations behind actions, both grand and mundane. It's a lens that can be unsettling at times,
Yeah.
but also incredibly insightful.
And ultimately, that's the power of The Prince.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer easy answers or moral absolutes.
Right.
But it challenges us to think deeply, to question assumptions, and to grapple with the complexities of power in all its forms.
Right.
And that's a journey worth taking, even if it leads us down some unexpected paths.
So as you continue to explore the world of leadership strategy and influence, keep Machiavelli's insights close at hand. Observe the dynamics of power at play. Analyze the motivations behind actions, and ask yourself the tough questions.
Yeah.
Because in the end, the most important lessons are often those we discover for ourselves.
And remember, the pursuit of power, whether for good or ill, is a fundamentally human endeavor. By understanding its intricacies, we gain not just a strategic advantage,
Right.
but a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world we inhabit.